Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to everyone that's joining here live. For those of you that are going to be watching the replay afterwards, unable to join, maybe throughout your workday, welcome to you as well. I have really been looking forward to this workshop, Master Your Money in 2025. I'm going to talk through the system that my wife Jess and I have employed and our own financial plan, and I'll share a little bit of our journey along the way as well. So my hope is that this webinar is an opportunity to motivate, to inspire, to help you learn some things that you can evaluate further. And we're going to talk through several different areas of the financial plan on today's session. So just as a reminder, we are sharing the replay, and this webinar is in collaboration with the American Pharmacists Association. So a shout out to APhA. I've been a member of APhA dating back to, I think, 2004 or 5 when I was a student at Ohio Northern University and have maintained my membership ever since then. If you're not already a member of APhA, I would highly encourage you to check it out. You can go to pharmacist.com/join. And as a part of our collaboration, you can use the coupon code YFP for 25% off that membership. And we have collaborated now with APhA for, I think, 6 or 7 years to offer webinars and workshops like this to APhA members. And we have some other sessions that we do with them as well. So just a really neat collaboration as it relates to personal finance education and how much they value this topic for their members. So shout out to APhA on that. For those that I have not had a chance to meet before, my name is Tim Ulbrich. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Your Financial Pharmacist. And my financial journey as a pharmacist really started back in 2008, 2009. After I finished pharmacy school, I went to a 06 PharmD program at Ohio Northern University. If there's any polar bears out there, a shout out to the polar bears that are watching and listening. And I did a year of residency after that at Ohio State. And shortly thereafter, quickly realized that, hey, this six-figure income that I had long awaited for, that everyone kept talking about, it was good, but it wasn't all that I thought it was cracked up to be. And I would quickly realize that, hey, we had some work to do financially. And so my wife, Jess, and I, you see her there up on the screen, we've got 4 boys. This very much has been a family financial journey for us. But Jess and I really spent the first few years after pharmacy school, 2008 through about 2012, with this nagging feeling that we were spinning our wheels financially. We were overwhelmed with the significant amount of student loan debt. I graduated with a little more than $200,000 of student loan debt, and Jess married into that debt. I felt like we didn't have the tools and resources on how to best save and invest for the future, but I knew that was something that we should be doing. And again, I had this sense, this nagging sense that, hey, we make a good income, right? By all objective measures, we make a good income, but I don't feel like we are progressing financially as much as we could. And perhaps that relates, and some of you can relate to that as well. And so this was that spinning our wheels sensation that I mentioned just a couple moments ago. And it was about 4 years in to my journey as a new practitioner in 2012, where I had this sense that, hey, I really need to learn more. I need to improve my financial literacy. So I started reading lots of personal finance books, listening to podcasts, which were in their infancy at the time. And one book in particular, which I'm going to reference later on the slides, called The Millionaire Next Door. If you've never read it, I would highly recommend it, by Tom Stanley. One of the things that he talks about in that book is the importance of how, yes, your income is a good tool, and many pharmacists have a good income, but what we do with that income, measured by your net worth, which is your assets, what you own minus your liabilities or what you owe, that's what actually sticks, right? It's a much better indicator of your financial health and progress. And as obvious as that sounds, it was a light bulb moment for us to say, hey, we've earned almost $500,000 of income at this point in time. But when I did our net worth calculation, we were humbled that our net worth was a negative $225,000. Disconnect, right, between income and actually achieving the financial progress and goals that we desired. So for us, the student loan piece was a big piece that we had to move to be able to really progress with the rest of the financial plan. Long story short, so we can move on with the rest of today's session. In fall of 2015, we hit submit on that very last payment of more than $200,000 of student loan debt. And that was really the beginning of our financial journey. At the time, I had thought, hey, we've arrived, right? That's the finish line. But that was the beginning of our journey and many other financial moves and decisions that ultimately opened up for us. But we realized that, hey, this is a lifelong journey. There is no arrived with the financial plan. So whether you're someone listening today who's nearing retirement, or whether you're someone who's in the middle of your career, or perhaps you're on the front end of your career, maybe we even have a couple students that are in the room. This is not a destination. It's something we are constantly working towards. We're going to grow, we're going to learn, we're going to improve, we're going to make mistakes. It's inevitable. And we can continue to evolve and progress in our financial plan. So, shortly after that journey, I established the Your Financial Pharmacist blog and would soon thereafter meet my partner, Tim Baker, who's a fee only certified financial planner. And that would be the beginning of what many know today as Your Financial Pharmacist. And if you're not already familiar with who we are and what we do, our bread and butter is fee only one on one financial planning services for pharmacists at all stages of their career. And so you can learn more about that at yourfinancialpharmacist.com. We also have on the website podcasts that we've been publishing for now 7+ years, lots of resources. We have a weekly newsletter, and I hope and encourage you to check out those resources and to find the ones that are going to be most beneficial to your journey. Now, an important disclaimer before we get too far is that everyone's financial situation is different. So for the 79 of you that are on this webinar right now, and for the many others that are watching the replay afterwards, right? Everyone's situation is unique. And how we apply this information is really the art of the financial planning process. And that's why we so firmly believe that working with a qualified fee-only financial planner can be a game changer to helping apply this information to your personal situation. But know that because of that, and because your situation is unique, and I don't know all the details of your situation, that this session is really meant to be educational in nature. And so I hope it'll inspire and motivate you and want to learn more. And for those that are ready to learn more about working one-on-one with a financial planner, we'd love to have that conversation. But this session in particular is meant to be educational in nature. We are going to walk through what I consider to be the 5 steps that Jess and I have used in our own financial plan. Now, I wish I could tell you that when we started back in 2008, 2009, that I knew what these 5 steps were, right? Obviously, we didn't at the time. We implemented some things that worked. We did other things that didn't work. We would learn that, we would refine that. And then ultimately, as I look now back on that journey of paying off that $200,000 of student loan debt and then eventually saving our first $1 million, these were the pieces that were so critical. And I'm hopeful to give you the shortcut to be able to implement some of this in your own plan. So first and foremost, we'll talk about what it means to get organized and why that's so important before we actually implement some of the other steps. We'll then talk about a vitals check, which is, hey, where are you at right now? What are some of the gaps and the opportunities from a planning perspective? We'll talk about why the vision piece is so important and so often overlooked in traditional financial planning. We'll then talk about how the budget is really where the rubber meets the road, how we implement this to have the cash flow available to achieve the various goals that we want to achieve, however big or small those are. And then finally, what I think is the secret sauce to the recipe is automation, automation, automation. And when you get to a point of automating your financial plan so that each month your goals are being achieved and you know they're being achieved and those are automatically being achieved. We'll talk about what that looks like. I think that's really where you see the confidence growing and you see people start to really begin to be in the phase of building wealth. So hang with me. We're going to walk through each one of these in more detail. And you'll notice as I go throughout the session today that I'm going to reference several different resources. And I have these available for you for free. If you go to yourfinancialpharmacist.com/toolbox, you'll see several different resources that I have implemented in my own financial plan. None of these are complicated resources or spreadsheets. Very easy to implement on your own as well. And you can reference those, save a copy, interact with those tools. Again, all of those available at yourfinancialpharmacist.com/toolbox. So just grab that link. And then you can come back and reference and pull documents as you see fit when we go throughout the session. So how are we doing before we talk about these individual steps? How are we doing as a society financially? Well, I think many would argue that there's work to be done, right? Maybe not so great. If you look at the average household with credit card debt, so those that have credit card debt, there's an average balance of $21,541, right? With a total outstanding debt of over $17 trillion. Now, I'm not talking here about the credit card charges that we pay off each and every month, right? Those are fine. Often we're even using that to optimize various rewards, whether that be cashback or other rewards. This is the revolving credit card debt that can accrue interest at 15, 18, 20, 24%, right? So there's obviously work to be done there. We currently have over $1.7 trillion that are outstanding in student loan debt. Over a quarter of all Americans have nothing saved for retirement. Now, I know that doesn't apply to this group, right? Hopefully, we're much further along than that, but over a quarter of Americans have nothing saved, and approximately a third of adults report that they could not cover a $400 unexpected expense without borrowing or selling something, right? So we're talking here about having some reserves available so that not if, but when something happens, we can cover that expense without taking on debt or without disrupting the rest of the financial plan. So as we look at how are we doing as a profession, and I see a couple of comments coming in, Kristen, in particular about, hey, salary increases, right, have not been projecting up as where we'd expect, especially in the context of inflation. And that is true in many cases. There are some roles within the profession where we actually see that increase outpacing inflation. But one of the trends that we often see, right, is that pharmacists' income typically has a high floor and a low ceiling, right? What's that mean? That means that we all started, I graduated when I was 24 years old, 16, 17 years ago now. And I came out with a really good six-figure income, right? That's a great income for someone in their mid-20s. But the ceiling on that income is also somewhat stagnant as we look at that. So high floor, low ceiling, meaning that if we put that income to use early in our careers and we can adjust accordingly, I think we've got great upside. But that can be challenging as expenses go up and things like inflation impact our salary. Now, if you look at the median income of a pharmacist, if you're just curious kind of where your income stands, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the median income for a pharmacist in the last data that we have in 2023 is a little over $136,000. That's a good income, right? May go farther or not so far, depending on where you live and what part of the country. Regardless, that income is more than $50,000 above the median household income in the United States, which was just over $80,000 in 2023. And even though pharmacists have that good income, these are some things that I hear over and over again. I'm overwhelmed with student loan debt. I'm confused about how to best save and invest for the future. And as I mentioned in my own journey, I make this good income, but I don't feel like I'm progressing financially. And that's because things can get expensive, right? Easily as we look at progressing throughout our career. And so one of the messages I want you to leave with today is that a six-figure salary, it's a good salary, it's a good income. It's a good income, but it is not a financial plan. As Tom Stanley would argue in the book, The Millionaire Next Door, that income we have to leverage, we have to put to use, we have to be intentional and strategic. I think you can do that. We'll talk about what that looks like today. I think our team of fee-only certified financial planners can play a big role in this. That salary is a great tool, but we have to put that tool to use to ultimately achieve the goals that we set out to achieve, whatever those may be for your individual financial plan. So to set the stage, again, we're recording this, so we'll send a replay afterwards for those that are live as well as those that couldn't make it live today. I do have some poll questions here early on, so I hope you'll participate those to help me understand the group and to engage you guys a little bit further. If you have something to share, whether that be a question or something from your own experiences, please use the chat to do that. I have found in these sessions before that when you're sharing, when you're interacting, just like I saw Kristen do with her post, that helps others experience this session as well. Ask questions of one another. Feel free to ask questions of me. I'll try to get to those, as many of those as we can, and share your own experiences as well in the chat as we go throughout the session. If you prefer to remain anonymous with a question, you'll notice the Q&A feature as well that's available. All right, so first poll question I have is, who's in the room? Who's in the room? This will really help me guide some of the session and how detailed we go in certain areas. Are you a student, resident, or fellow? Are you a new practitioner, which I'm defining within the first 5 years of graduation? Are you in the middle of your career, right? Where I think I kind of am at in that 15 to 25 year window of your career or so. Or are you in that pre-retiree or retiree phase of your career? So I see we've got 70-ish responses of the 90 or so people are alive. I'll just give it here a second. Thank you guys for your engagement. I appreciate it. All right, here's what we got. We have about 25% that are in the student, resident, or fellow, under 10% new practitioner, 60% that are in the middle of your career. I think you're going to find this session to be particularly impactful. And then 10% that are in the pre-retiree or retiree phase. Awesome. Thank you guys for sharing. What is your number one financial concern? What is your number one financial concern right now? Is it saving for retirement? Is it the rising expenses and the flat income that we just talked about? Is it debt repayment? That could be student loans. That could be credit card debt. That could be other debt. Is it tax planning? Or is it something else? And if it's something else and you're willing to share, go ahead and put what that something else is in the comments. So, what is your number one financial concern right now? Some of you are like, "Hey, where's the more than one of the above option?" Right? So pick one. What is the top concern at this moment? See, we got about 75 people or so. Thank you for those that are jumping in the comments. Opening my own business, save plan. I'm guessing it's the questions around the save plan. All right, great. Thank you guys. So let me share out what I see here. We've got about 25% that say it's saving for retirement, close to another 25% rising expenses, flat income. A little over a third that say it's debt repayment, small number, 5% saying tax planning, and then a small percent, about 7%, saying something else. Um, Love the engagement. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Jessica, as well for engaging. Um, Heather, I love what you're sharing there, right? I want to enjoy life now and be nimble for an emergency. That's great. And especially for those that are in the middle of their career, I think it's so important that we really take that step back. My wife and I were just having this conversation recently of, hey, we've done a really good job of saving, right? Just like Heather, you mentioned, you've done a great job, it looks like, of saving. But also, are we prioritizing living our rich life today, right? Both are important. I've got four boys, 13 to 5, right? We're in this season where, yeah, things are expensive, but these are the moments. This is the season where we can really experience those things as a family. And so we can sock more money away, but is that the right move? Is that the right move for us financially? And how do we find that balance? I think that's what I hear there, Heather, as well. Thank you, Julie and Gregory, for the contributions as well. Yeah, I'm with you, Heather, right? Yeah, in the 401k, right? So there's a liquidity piece there that needs to be considered. All right, thank you guys. One more question for you. All right, let me go back here. How are you currently working on your financial plan? Are you working with a planner? Some of you, it's no, I'm a DIYer and it's working great. No, I'm a DIYer and I could use some help. Yes, I am working with a planner and it's a good fit. Or yes, I'm working with a planner and I'm not sure it's the best fit. Which one of these best describes how you are currently going about your financial plan? Give it another minute. Thank you guys. Love the engagement. I appreciate it. Get a couple more responses here once we get to 75. Come on, 80. Can we get to 80? All right. Thank you, Lauren, for joining today. I hope you're doing well. Um, all right, here's what we got. About 13%. No, I'm a DIYer and it's working great. So meaning no, I'm not working with someone else and I'm doing it myself. No, I'm not working with a professional and I could use some help. A little over half. Yes, I'm working with someone that's a good fit, 15, just shy of 15%. And yes, I'm working with someone and I'm not sure it's the best fit, right around 15% as well. Awesome. Thank you guys for engaging with those three questions. That really helps me identify who's in the room. All right, here we go. Ready? We're going to go rapid fire through these 5 steps that Jess and I have implemented in our own plan, first to get out of a couple $100,000 of student loan debt. And then as we've evolved our plan to build our savings and wealth, and also think about the discussion we're just having, which is how can we not only plan for our financial selves in the future, but also make sure we're prioritizing and living the rich life today. That's been our most recent work in our own financial plan. So step number one would be get organized. Get organized. All right. So this is one takeaway that I think can be transformative to your financial plan, which is putting together a legacy folder. Because by doing this step, it forces you to get organized with all of your financial documents. We cannot make decisions or recommendations, right, on where we're going to go with our financial plan until we are sure we have all of the information that we need. So this step serves a couple of purposes. One, it's incredibly important from a peace of mind and planning perspective. If something were to happen unexpectedly to you, that you have all of your information compiled in one location that hopefully is accessible by others that are going to be important to that succession plan. But also, it forces us to get the information that we have across our financial plan that will inform the decision making, right? I can't tell you how often I may talk with someone who is asking a particular question, and there's more questions I have, right, to understand what else is going on in the financial plan before we can even get close to answering the question that is leading the conversation. And the reason is we have to have all the pieces of the puzzle before we actually try to put the puzzle together. I think about this. I used to puzzle a lot with my mom and grandma growing up. Right. And the first thing we had to do was get all of the border pieces out, get the frame out so we can then see the picture and work within that to be able to make some other decisions. Same thing I think about with the financial plan. The legacy folder is our opportunity to get organized and get all the information that's going to inform the plan and also is going to help give us peace of mind. So there is not a right way to do this necessarily. What I'm sharing with you here is the legacy folder setup that Jess and I have in our own financial plan. This is our table of contents. The way we have structured this is we have this set up electronically in a shared Google Drive. Now, who has access to this folder? The Google Drive is Jess and I have access, of course. My in-laws have access because they would be ones that are caring for my kids in the event that something happened to Jess and I. And then our financial planning team at YFP has access. I cannot tell you how good that feels to know that we have all of our information. You can see what's included here so that if something were to happen to Jess and I tomorrow, we know that the information's there and the right people have the information they need to be able to make decisions and decisions that we want to proceed with our own financial plan. Now, some of these things, as you look at the individual components, right, you'll see that, for example, in folder B, which is important documents, birth certificates, marriage certificates, social security cards, those are physical copies that we keep in a fireproof safe at home, right? I have them referenced here for completeness, but most of this is going to be stuff that we have shared virtually, and then obviously some of the access to the accounts as well. So important documents, insurance policies. So you can see here there's an opportunity to update this perhaps once a year or so. Estate documents. Again, these are the things that start to identify, do you have gaps? Do you have opportunities where you can enhance your financial plan if you don't already have estate documents in place? Things like car title, home titles, Section G is the biggest account, all of our financial accounts. So I have a table that is summarizing, right? What are our various accounts? What's our high yield savings accounts? Where's our checking accounts? Where's our retirement accounts? My Roth, Jess's Roth, the IRA, the brokerage account. Where do these live? We also have a network tracking sheet. I'll come back to that here in a moment. So security statements. We have tax returns, historical tax returns. I have records related to the business. This is a one-stop shop of all of our information that can easily be accessed by those that need to have access to that information. Okay, so easy to put together. And I have a resource in the toolbox that you can use. Again, nothing complicated here. There are paid resources out there. I don't think you necessarily need those. Something you can create on your own and update over time. So that piece, as simple as that sounds, right? When you look at the detail that's involved there, it will force you to get organized with your accounts, with your information, to understand where everything's at if you don't already have a good understanding of that information. Okay. So when we look at the second part is the vitals check. And Jacob, let me address your question real quick. I'm trying to keep track of a couple of these as we go. So the idea of a legacy letter would be any type of wishes or notes that you want to leave behind that wouldn't typically reside inside of estate planning documents like a living will. Okay, so that could be things I want to share with my boys or with my in-laws or with my parents that don't reside in the legalese type of document in an estate planning that I want to make sure is communicated and passed on. That's the concept of a legacy letter. It has no legal bearing or holding, but it's a mechanism to be able to communicate that information. The second step is we want to do a vitals check. Okay. A vitals check is where are we at today? Okay. And what are the opportunities potentially that we can implement as it relates to the financial plan? So I have several questions here on the next slide that are meant to help you identify where there may be gaps and where there's some opportunities for your planning going forward. Number one is, do you know your net worth and track it regularly? We'll talk about net worth here in a moment. If you're not already doing this, I would argue that once a month, if you're a client of ours at YFP Planning, we have a software tool through Right Capital that allows us to do this automatically, but you could also do this manually in a spreadsheet. Do you know your net worth and are you tracking it? This is the 20,000-foot view of how your plan is progressing. Okay, if you're not sure what that is, stay with me. I'll come back to that here in a moment. Do you have a spending plan and a strategy? Right. I often say that the financial plan and achieving your goals, whatever those goals may be, is as simple as living off of less than you make and making sure we're clear about where those dollars are going towards the goals. Now, what does that look like, right? That could be a very granular budget or that could be a loose budget, but overall, do we have a strategy? Do we have a strategy of how we are allocating our income, whether it's fixed or variable, or what would happen with extra income if it comes, so that we're clear on how we're going to be funding the various goals. And I'm going to give you an example of that coming up here in a little bit. Do you have a fully funded emergency fund? General rule of thumb is 3 to 6 months worth of essential expenses. Sometimes it needs to be more. Sometimes people can get by with maybe just a little bit less if they're focused on something else like paying off some high interest rate credit card debt. But we want to be able to build that emergency fund. So again, we can work from that point of confidence and be able to fund an emergency when it happens and be able to move forward with the rest of the plan. Do you have any revolving credit card debt? Right? That we need to prioritize and pay off. Do you have an optimized student loan repayment strategy for those of you that still have student loans? I know for many folks that are here in our mid-career, those may be gone. For others, maybe they're still hanging around. Probably for the new practitioners, this might be more top of mind, but I didn't say that you had to be debt-free. That can be a personal goal, but do you have an optimized strategy? Have you considered the options, whether that's forgiveness, non-forgiveness, income-driven repayment, other options that are out there? And have you been able to prioritize and make sure that you're focused on the one that's best for your situation? Do you have own occupation, long-term disability insurance that covers at least 60% of your income? And looking at your employer policy and what that covers and whether or not additional coverage is needed. Really important for pharmacists to think about what would you be doing? What is your plan in the event that you're unable to work as a pharmacist because of a disability or a car accident or a chronic health condition? Can we continue to fund our financial plan and our goals? Other items in the vitals check. Do you have professional liability insurance? All right. I think for most people, the answer to that is yes, but want to make sure. And we want to ensure that we have liability insurance that's independent of our employer coverage. Fairly inexpensive for pharmacists overall, depending on your role, but it's an important piece that we have in place. Do you have adequate term life insurance? Again, looking at not only what your employer covers, but do we have adequate term life insurance of our own? And what specifically are we going to try to accomplish with that term life insurance policy if we have dependents that rely upon our income in the event of an unforeseen death? Not fun to think about. Nobody likes paying insurance premiums. But again, peace of mind, making sure that we're prioritizing some of those catastrophic areas of the financial plan. Do you know your retirement number? Right? Do you know whether you're early in your career, middle of your career, near in retirement? Are we clear on how much is enough? Now, if you want more information on that, we've done a couple podcast episodes on this topic. How much is enough when it comes to retirement savings? We'll be doing more webinars as we go throughout the year. But we often talk about retirement as a hope, wish, or dream, right? And retirement is a mathematical set of assumptions. Sure, those assumptions may change, will change over time. But have we done the work to identify what is that number and then discount it to say, hey, today, what do I need to be doing so that those assumptions, if they hold true, allow me to achieve my goal? So important. I can't tell you how many pharmacists I've talked with that say, hey, I'm working with a financial planner, but I'm not clear on what my retirement number is, right? Whether you're near in retirement, middle of your career, front of your career, we can update this over time, but we want to have a directional vision of where we're going. And most importantly, what we need to be doing month by month to give us a chance of achieving that goal. Because when we look at retirement numbers in the future, right, especially for those that are early in our career, these numbers can feel big and they can feel scary, but we can all do something with a number if it's on a monthly basis that we can relate to today. Really important. Do you have an estate planning document or the documents in place? We talked about that briefly. And do you ever get surprised by a tax bill or a refund? Right? If that's the case, there might be an opportunity that we're looking at from a tax planning perspective. So these are meant to be broad categories that help you identify, hey, plan, for your own plan, as we're talking about this vitals check, what might be some opportunities where you can focus on and improve upon heading into the future. Now, the second piece I want to talk about here in the vitals check is getting clear on your net worth. If you're not already tracking your net worth, my encouragement is that you start that as a result of hearing this session today. Okay, so your net worth is your assets, what you own, minus your liabilities or what you owe. What you own minus what you owe equals your net worth. And I remember doing this calculation for the very first time back in 2012, got out a half piece of paper, assets on the right, liabilities on the left, and didn't have a whole lot in the assets column at the moment, but had a lot of student loan debt, had a mortgage, had some car loans, right? And so that was a very eye-opening experience of, hey, we're making a good income, but it's not sticking. It's not sticking. And that's why net worth really helps us evaluate, are we progressing numbers wise in the direction that we want to? Now, that's the quantitative piece. We also have to be thinking about the qualitative piece as well of living that rich life today, right? Both are important. So again, the book Millionaire Next Door was really a stimulus for me. If you haven't read that before, I would highly encourage you to check it out. And one of the things that I like, the quotes from that book, Tom Stanley says, hey, one of the reasons that millionaires are economically successful is that they think differently. They think differently. And while he's talking about several things in that book, one of those is that they're not thinking about their income as being the measure of success, but how that income is leveraged to stick as measured by the net worth, right? The assets minus the liabilities. Now, if you're curious about where you may be and how you're stacking up, I know pharmacists type A maybe want to compare themselves. He does give an example in the book of expected net worth. Okay, so what should be your expected net worth? And what he defines that as is your age time your gross annual income divided by 12. So if you're 45 years old and you're making $140,000 per year, right? Pretty realistic scenario, probably for a mid-career pharmacist. 45 times 140 divided by 10, that would suggest that your expected net worth should be $630,000. Now, you got to keep in mind that many pharmacists, right, might have gotten a late start to savings because we have a longer timeline to getting the degree, and also because of student loan debt. So if you're feeling like you're behind in that, that may make sense, right, because of the pathway that's unique to us. Now, he also adds that those are in the top quartile, the top 25%. You can take that expected net worth and multiply it by 2. So 2 times the expected net worth equals the top quartile. So in that example, 2 times 630 is $1.26 million. Now, this is not meant to be anything more than that, right? It's a fun back of napkin math calculation just to get a gauge of, hey, where might I be at in terms of the trajectory of my net worth based on where I'm at in my career. Now, most pharmacists just coming out, most new practitioners are coming out with a negative net worth, right? Just like was my situation that I shared at the beginning. Now, tracking net worth. Simple spreadsheet will do. Again, we have financial planning software available for our clients at YFP Planning, as well as in our online community, YFP Plus, that will do this for you. I like to have both the automatic calculations through the right capital planning tool, as well as doing our own tracking, just so I can kind of see account by account. Nothing fancy, nothing complicated in the spreadsheet, right? That's the beauty of it. So we're simply looking at every financial account that we have on a month-by-month basis. Takes about 10 to 15 minutes to fill out at most. If you're using something like an online platform where it's syncing up accounts, even easier, right? And we're just adding up all of our assets, we're subtracting the liabilities, and we're calculating the net worth. So this includes brokerage accounts, business values, college savings, high-yield savings, real estate, both the asset value and the liability or the mortgage that we owe, retirement accounts, so whether that's IRAs or 401ks. When we first started, right, this was pretty simple, just a couple of accounts, and it's evolved over time. And then we're looking at the progression of that month over month. So the way that Jess and I implement this is that on a monthly basis, we're looking at this and we're just zooming out to say, hey, are we heading in the right direction? Are there any surprises? And then, of course, the more detailed planning comes after this, when we look at are we actually achieving the goals that we want to achieve in any given time frame. Typically, we're thinking on a yearly basis, and I'll share what that looks like in the moment. Kristen, I wish I'd started tracking this right out of school, right? Absolutely. It's a mindset shift that really helps us focus on our numbers. David, glad to hear that you've been doing it for a while. It can be a good sense of motivation, of course. Now, the next piece that we typically think about when we're looking at this vitals check component, I alluded to this just a little bit earlier, is answering this question, am I on track when it comes to my savings for retirement? Now, this requires a decent amount of work when it's done well, because we need to understand, what does that term even mean to us, right? Retirement, what's the timeline? Am I planning on working part-time? Is it going to be a complete stop? Is it traditional retirement age? Is it really early retirement age? And as you can guess here and see just an example of in the spreadsheet, there are a lot of assumptions and variables that go into play when we try to answer the question, am I on track? Okay, but we can answer those questions and we can put those assumptions into play, and we can change and evolve those over time, which will be necessary, especially for those that are doing this early in their career. And if you look at this, just one example, it's meant to be nothing more than that on the screen. What you see here is a nest egg calculator that is custom built, that our planning team uses in-house with our clients, along with our financial planning software and tool through Right Capital. So this is a mock client. This is not a real client. But if you look at this example, we have some inputs that we need to factor in terms of current age and target retirement age. How long do we think we're going to be working? What's our projected death age? How much do we currently have saved? And then we're looking at some assumptions in terms of what types of allocation we have our portfolios in now, as well as when we get to retirement. How aggressive, what's the division of that portfolio between stocks and bonds and other types of investments. We're then factoring in various types of needs, assumptions based around Social Security. And then all of that feeds into, you see here bolded at the bottom is a number. Here it's $4.44 million, right? And this is where people, if they're using something like an online calculator, this is usually where they put in the numbers and then they shut down their computer, right? Because that's a big number. And especially if that's a number that's off into the distance. Now, for those that are here today that are closer to retirement, right, we can start to put our arms around this and have an idea of what changes, if any, do we need to make. But if someone's in the middle or even the front half of their career, this is a big, scary, overwhelming number that's hard to plan around, right? So what we need to do and the work that needs to be done after this is based on this set of assumptions of what our need is and what we already have saved. What do I need to be doing per month today? That's something we can wrap our arms around with and we can begin to plan, and doesn't feel necessarily as big, as scary, even if we're behind and we need to start to put some momentum into that plan going forward, right? And then, of course, the more granular detail is how we do that. Is it in traditional retirement accounts like 401ks or 403bs or IRAs? Is it traditional versus Roth? Should we have more in non-retirement accounts like brokerage accounts? These are all the types of decisions we're trying to plan, but we can plan. That's the key here as we look at this part of the financial plan. We have to be able to look at these calculations and numbers so we can backtrack to today and begin to implement something specifically that will apply to you. So if you aren't currently implementing this or have a good idea of what your number is, that's an opportunity as we look at the vitals check and a potential area for financial planning. Step number 3 is the vision part of the financial plan. I'm reading a great book on this topic right now, and they argue in that book, and I would agree, and our team, I think, does an incredible job of this, that in traditional financial planning, we often focus on the X's and O's and numbers without a clear picture on the vision, right? Where are we going and why are we going there? So, for example, when somebody says to me, hey, Tim, I'm 45 years old, I've saved $1 million or $1.5 million, right? Where are we going? What does success look like? And have we gotten clear on that definition of success? Because money at the end of the day is an object and a tool that's going to allow us to do various things that derive significance and meaning to us. That could be investing in experiences. That could be getting back some of our time. That could be starting a business. That could be giving, right? A whole lot of different things we could do with it. But what is the vision? Are we clear on what that vision is? And is our financial plan supporting that vision? I think too often we start running and we shoot for a goal, or maybe we even gotten to that goal, but we're not clear on where we're going and why we're going there. I love this quote from Stephen Covey that says, once you have a clear idea of your priorities, that is your values, your goals, and high leverage activities, organize around them. Organize around them, right? So, what we're talking about here is that your financial plan should be the engine upon which you're living your rich life, right? The financial plan and the numbers shouldn't be the end target themselves. They should be the mechanism by which we're able to achieve the goals that we want to achieve. That's a reframe and a mindset shift that I think is so important. And a shout out to our team at YFP Planning that I think does an incredible job of implementing in the Y vision part of the financial plan. Now, one activity I want you to begin thinking about, and you can start to journal now, but you can reflect afterwards as well, is start to think at least 1 year out. Okay. Think at least 1 year out, hopefully even further than that. But for this exercise, at least 1 year. And if we were to fast forward 1 year from today, January 23rd, 2026, what has to be accomplished in your financial plan such that you're taking care of your future self and you're living a rich life today? And maybe for some of you that say, hey, I've done a great job of the future self part. Maybe it's more of the living the rich life, or perhaps it could be the opposite. And we want to get specific with goals and with dollar amounts attached. Okay, this is often where my experience tells me, the experience Jess and I have had, that often we have all of these ideas that are swirling in our mind. Am I on track for retirement? Right? Are we saving appropriately for the kids' activities? Where does giving fit in to the financial plan? Do we have enough in our emergency fund or savings? Will we have enough to fund this vacation? What about this experience? We have all these goals that are swirling in our mind. And what we need to do is get these ideas out of our mind, and we need to put them on paper with a prioritization and a dollar amount. Doesn't mean we're going to be able to achieve all of them, but we can at least start to look at them and prioritize them as a part of the financial plan. So let me give you a real life example. Okay, as we head into 2025, well, we're now in 2025, but the rest of 2025, when Jess and I looked at this for 2025, this is the list of goals that we came up with together. Okay, some of these are more exciting than others, right? We have to replace our water filter system in the house. Not exciting. And we actually just found out we got to replace a portion of our roof. Not exciting. Have to do it, right? We want to increase our emergency fund beyond that 6 month amount because I'm self-employed, and I think that's probably the right move. We have some homeschool expenses. We want to do some Roth conversions this year that we have to have some money set aside for taxes. We want to get out in front more of the boys' activities that are getting more and more expensive as they get older. We want to prioritize the HSA. We've got some goals for exercise equipment. We've got 3 vacations we're trying to plan for this year as we look at that balance of living a rich life as a family. We want to have some more funds in the home CapEx account. We have some goals around living room for furniture, right? So this was Jess and I getting the goals out of our head onto paper that we could then start to work with together. And I'll show you kind of how this comes to life in terms of executing these goals throughout the year. The fourth step, as I mentioned at the beginning, is really where the rubber meets the road, right? It's the plan, it's the budget, it's the strategy, however granular or loose you want to be. At the end of the day, we have a certain amount of income. We have a list of goals, and how are we going to prioritize and fund those goals, right? So I'll share what has worked for us as we've looked at doing this in our own system. So our next step was, it's not just the goals, but now we need to actually put a dollar amount to them. And then we need to also think about how we're going to prioritize them. Okay. And this is where it can get overwhelming because, we might quickly realize that, hey, maybe we're not going to accomplish all of these in the year. But if we can prioritize them and put a dollar amount to them and look at what we have as projected income to allocate towards them, we then can start to face reality of what we're able to achieve. And that's that confidence, that's the empowerment, that's the motivation, the peace of mind that I've been talking about, right? We're closing these loops of unanswered questions and getting the information out there so we can start to make informed decisions. And we have a shared vision, hopefully, not always, but we work towards it, a shared vision of accomplishing these goals that we've discussed together. So again, some of these more exciting than others, but the dollar amount with the goal is a really important second step here. Now, as we continue to move this forward, right, as we continue to get more granular, and this is actually an example from last year that you can pull as a template if you want in the toolbox as well. And really cool when we look at our financial planning software through Right Capital, we can do this in a lot less manual way and put it in a more visual way to track our progress and goals towards achieving those things throughout the year. But the next step of this would be, hey, for each one of these goals, what do we have currently funded, if anything? Sometimes it's a zero, right? What's the priority of these? Really important. What's the target amount? What's the difference? And what's the monthly contribution? I tend to think about these things on a monthly basis, right? What's the priority? How much do we have currently saved? What's the target amount? What's the difference between current savings and how much we'd like to have? And then we divide that by 12. What's the contribution that we would need on a monthly basis to get to that goal? Right. And that's where we can then start to look at this on a month by month basis, right? What's our monthly take home pay on average? What are the known expenses we're going to have throughout the month? What are those fixed expenses? When we look at the mortgage, when you look at car payments, you look at utilities, what's then the amount that we might want to have set aside for some of the discretionary fun expenses, things that we do as a family? And then what, if anything, is remaining that we can prioritize and earmark to the specific goal that we have identified? And how can we work through those one priority after another? Okay, so the way I like to think about this is I often encourage people to start with, I'm not suggesting you have to forever stay with something like a zero-based budget, but a zero-based budget to start with helps you identify what is your disposable income on a month-by-month basis. What do I mean by that? Well, if you have your take-home pay, your average monthly take-home pay, and you can subtract and identify your essential expenses and your discretionary expenses, right? And you don't have to get super granular on a regular basis. We should have an estimate of, on a monthly basis, what is our disposable income? What's left over after the essential and the discretionary that could be earmarked to the financial goals so that we can proactively plan and move those funds to the various goals that we're trying to achieve rather than hoping there's money that's left over. Okay, so what's worked for best for us is that we've complete a zero-based budget usually about once a year. Okay, just to get an idea with income changes, with expense changes, what's our expected monthly expenses? Looking at mortgage, giving, utilities, subscriptions, activities, insurance, et cetera. We then take that number and we subtract it from the take-home pay. Yeah, David, I would agree. You can use tools. I still ask when I pull pharmacists, hey, what's the tool app that you like to use most? Google spreadsheets or Excel tends to come up as number one. And then other tools like YNAB, as David mentioned in the chat. So we subtract that expected monthly expense number from our take-home pay, and then the remaining amount we divide into two areas. Okay, we have other discretionary expenses that we just track on a monthly basis, and then we have that earmarked towards our goals. So let me give you an example. Let's say our take-home pay is $10,000 a month. Okay, just round numbers. Let's say we determine that our expected monthly expenses are $5,000. Well, we subtract that from the take-home pay. So 5,000 comes off the 10,000. And what we have left, that 5,000, is earmarked into one of two areas. We set aside a certain amount that's going to be for discretionary expenses. Okay, these would be things like eating out, various trips and experiences with the boys, right? Those that might not be consistent month by month. And that by definition, they're very important parts of the financial plan and living that rich life today, but we could cut them if we had to cut them, right? That's why they're discretionary. And then the remaining portion of that, we earmark specifically for our goals. Okay, we earmark specifically for our goals. So we might say, hey, of that $5,000, let's say we've got $2,000 a month for discretionary. The other $3,000 is for goals. And then once we know that, we can start to move those funds and automate it and do it proactively to the goals that we've set out in the order that we've set out to achieve them. And that's step 5, which is automation. Okay, in the book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi, which is a great book. If you've never read it, I'd recommend it. It's a good kind of personal finance 101 book. I think he does a good job of teaching overall. But in that book in particular, his section on automation is really good. And one of the things he says, and I agree with, is that automating your money is the single most profitable system you ever build. And I would agree not only mathematically, but from a confidence standpoint and a momentum standpoint, when you get paid and your money's automatically moving to various goals, funding an emergency fund, funding savings, paying down debt, right? Whatever be the goals that you're doing, more towards retirement savings. When those funds are automatically moving because you've already determined what the goals are and how you're going to fund them, man, things really start to happen at that point in time, right? Because we have this sense of confidence, we have this sense of momentum with the financial plan rather than this scarcity mindset of, hey, what am I going to have left over to be funding my financial goals? A complete shift in how we think about the financial plan. And this is something our team at YFP Planning does an incredible job working with our clients on to get clear on these things and how we're going to achieve them. So let me show you automation conceptually, and then I'll show you kind of what it looks like specifically for Jess and I. So the idea again is that we have this certain amount of available capital, right? It's what I before called disposable income. And we're then using that available capital to fund various goals. These are the buckets, right? My partner, Tim Baker, did a great job in terms of our financial planning service development. And early on, we used to talk about this on the podcast all the time, getting clear with what we're working towards and having a bucket that is named and defined for that goal. Okay, so it might be travel, it might be an emergency fund, might be saving for kids' college, it might be the next car purchase, it might be a vacation home. And as you can see in this visual, sometimes we're funding more than one bucket at a time, other times maybe not. And we might be funding them at different rates, right? That's where it comes back to how much money do we have and what's the priority and the velocity at which we're going to fund them. So let me show you practically what this looks like. So Jess and I use Ally Online Bank for all our online banking. This is not a commercial for Ally, although I think that they have a great system that allows you to do this. Okay. And over time, we have developed several buckets and named those buckets for the goals that we're working on achieving. Now, when we first started this, it was one bucket. It was the emergency fund. Okay. And over time, we've evolved it, obviously, as our financial plan has evolved. And what you'll see here is there is alignment between the bucket name and the goals that we're working on. That was the post-it notes that I showed you. Okay. What you'll also notice here is that what's missing are those things that we'd want to directly fund, right? That I don't want money sitting in a high yield savings account, but I want being put to work in the market right away. Retirement contributions, brokerage account contributions, Roth IRA contributions, right? Things that we want working right away. I don't want sitting here in a high yield savings account. I want those moving automatically from the checking account to the investment account. But for other things where I need it to be more liquid, because we're going to need it in a period of time, I don't want it sitting in a checking account, right? Eroding. I want it earning some interest. And thankfully, high yield savings accounts are doing fairly well now. But I want it to be liquid and accessible, right? That's the purpose of these accounts. So it could be home maintenance. It could be activities that we have coming up for the year. It could be the next car purchase. It could be the emergency fund that we want to be liquid. It could be money that we're setting aside to prepare for the Roth conversions that I talked about earlier. Could be property taxes that we pay twice a year. And I just got that bill this past week. It could be the gifts throughout the year. It could be the vacations that I talked about previously, right? So important, we believe that you delineate these so that it's not a lump sum that's sitting in an account, but we can earmark it for the goal that we're achieving. So all this is when I log into Ally, all of these funds roll up to one high yield savings account. So I have a checking account with Ally, I have a high yield savings account with Ally, and inside of the high yield savings account, these are virtual buckets. Okay, so these aren't separate accounts. We used to have that before they implemented the bucket system, but these are a virtual representation of the funds that are in the high yield savings account. So we might have $60,000 or $70,000 that's sitting in the high yield savings account, but then it's earmarked in these different buckets based on the goals that we're trying to work towards. Okay, that's the concept and the idea with automation and naming these buckets and goals towards the goal that you're trying to achieve. So let me encourage you as you're hearing all this and we begin to wrap up here, right? There's a lot to consider. And I've thrown a lot of information at you in a short period of time. And some of you are looking at this saying, hey, I'm doing a good job. Others of you are looking at this saying, hey, I'm doing okay, but there's an opportunity to plan. And others are looking at this saying, Tim, I'm overwhelmed, right? This is a lot. And let me encourage you, no matter where you are in the journey, right? That there's always a next step that we need to take. We have to keep that momentum going. We have to keep that momentum going. And as you look at next steps that you can take with YFP, if you're a student, new grad, or you're a DIYer, I would really encourage you to check out our online community called YFP Plus. Okay, if you've never heard of YFP Plus before, we launched it back at the beginning of 2024. We've been at this now for a little over a year. It's an incredible online community where we have exclusive resources. We have live events like one that we're doing here this afternoon. We have separate resources and online courses that you can take within that platform as well. It's a great community to be alongside other pharmacists that are passionate about their financial wellness and achieving their goals. And that's what Corey articulated so well as someone who's in YFP Plus when he said, I've really enjoyed the platform and community. There's something incredible about surrounding yourself with others on the path, right? It's really about being around other like-minded individuals, accountability, and working towards our goals together. So for students, new practitioners, whether you're a resident, fellow, DIYer as well, I would encourage you to check out that platform. You can scan the QR code that's up here. We have a 30-day free trial, so you can check it out, make sure it's a good fit. I think you're going to love it, but we want you to feel good about that as well. And I hope to see those groups inside of that community. For those, especially those that answered, hey, I'm in the middle of my career or I'm coming up on retirement, I really could use some one-on-one help. We have a team at YFP Plus of fee-only certified financial planners that work with pharmacists all across the country. It's our bread and butter. It's what we do, virtual fee-only financial planning. And our team is well-versed in the financial needs of pharmacists. And we're really proud of that service model and how it is working to serve pharmacists not only in terms of the quantitative things of achieving their financial goals, but also finding the qualitative aspects of living that rich life today and striking that balance. So if you're ready to learn more about what it would look like to work one-on-one with our team, you can scan the QR code that's here to book a free discovery call to learn more about the service. We can learn more about your situation. You can also go to yourfinancialpharmacist.com/discovery, and that will take you to the same page of where the QR code is as well. Well, as we wrap up here, let me thank you first and foremost for coming. I know we had a little over 100 people on the call, and I know we're going to have many others that are watching the replay as well. I hope you found this information to be insightful and helpful and practical to your own financial plan with things that you can begin to implement. And if you have a question that comes up afterwards that maybe you weren't comfortable asking in front of the group or that you just think of afterwards, you can send us an email at info@yourfinancialpharmacist.com. You can also find that on the website. Again, info@yourfinancialpharmacist.com. And we would be glad to try to help you in the best way that we can. Let me take Heather's question and then we'll wrap up. So fee only, thank you, Heather. I throw that term around because we say that a lot. Fee only is actually a small percentage of financial planners and advisors that are out there. And by definition, what fee only means is that you as the client are paying the financial planning firm or the advisor a fee for the advice that they are giving, but they cannot and are not compensated by outside influences, such as recommending certain insurance products or investments that may or may not be in your best interest. So in a non-fee only model, you may be paying the planning fee many different ways that it could be assessed. And they also might be receiving commissions from various insurance products or other products that are recommended. In a fee only model, it allows for the direct payment of the fee between the client and the advisor without those outside influences being present. Thank you so much, everyone, again, for attending. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. All right, take care.